Well, hello, and thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to the Trailnet February 2025 Town Hall. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. I realize it's probably a lot of folks' lunch break, so we appreciate you making the time. It's always great to see so many people turn out for a virtual event, particularly on a day as nice as today. So thank you for making the time. My name's Jamie Cussman. I'm the Director of Development at Trailnet, and I'm joined today by a number of my colleagues who will be sharing some updates on their respective areas of expertise in a moment. Just kind of give you an overview of the day, we're going to talk about Trailnet's vision for the future and how that ties into both local and federal priorities, and then move into a complete streets presentation from our advocacy team. And then we'll hear from planning staff to give some highlights of their work in the area, and then a sneak peek of our 25 ride season. So this is a town hall, so we want it to be interactive. If you have questions along the way, I'd ask you to put them in the chat. And we'll just kind of collect them as we go rather than get derailed and try to answer them along the way. We'll just take them all at the end. We'll have about 15 or 20 minutes at the end to do a Q&A session. And if for some reason you can't get it answered there, or you have follow-up questions, please, we'll give our contact information so you can follow up and get that answered. And just as a reminder, today's presentation is being recorded. And so we'll send a link to the video recording to everyone who registered, regardless if they're here today or not. But when it comes time to do the Q&A, we will turn off the recording for that. So no worries there. So with all that said, in a moment, I'll ask our staff to introduce themselves. But first, I wanted to take a look at these poll results. If you haven't had a chance yet, you still get a minute. Looks like we're at 76% participation. So let me see how I can close this. Okay, can you all see this? Okay, cool. So you can see we have a good chunk of members here. About half the crowd is members. Almost half is other, which I'm curious to hear more about later. But thank you so much for joining. So now that our guests have had a chance to introduce themselves, first I'll stop sharing this. Hopefully that's not in your way anymore. Now that our guests have introduced themselves, I'm going to ask our staff to do the same. So just say your name and your title, pronouns. Kind of if your title's unclear, maybe give a brief a sentence, not an overview, what you do here, and we'll just pop from one staff to the next. So I can start. Hi, I'm Jamie Cussman, Trailnet Director of Development. She, her pronouns, and I will pass now to Corinne.
Hello, my name's Corinne. I am the Chief Operating Officer and I use she, her pronouns as well. I will pass to Cindy.
Hi, I'm Cindy Mentz. I'm the CEO at Trailnet. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm just thrilled to see everyone here. So great. Charles, how about you?
Hi, Charles Bryson. I'm the Policy Catalyst at Trailnet, and I will pass it to Allie Reed.
Hi, everyone. I'm Allie Reed. I use she, her pronouns, and I am our Community Programs and Advocacy Coordinator. I'm going to pass it over to Chantal.
Hi, my name is Chantal Incandela. I am the Marketing and Communications Director. I use she, her pronouns.
See, Kevin, do you want to go next?
Sure. Kevin Keach, Project and Facilities Manager. I'm the oldest and longest serving employee at Trailnet. So thanks to all of you for attending today. And I think Eric still needs to go, right?
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. And thank you all for joining us today. And my name is Eric Helmer, he, him pronouns, and I am Trailnet's Community Planning Manager. I think that's all of us. Oh, and Gina, I'm sorry.
Oh, you're fine. Gina Otto, she, her. I'm the Special Events Manager at Trailnet, and I get the pleasure of planning our bike rides.
And I think we may have one more. I thought I saw Adam Treester pop on the call. I don't know if I see him now, but Adam, if you're here and you want to introduce yourself, now's your chance.
Adam Treester, planning bike and pedestrian planner under Eric. He, him.
Thanks, Adam. Well, thank you so much, everyone. So yeah, without further ado, we can go ahead and start the presentation. And I'd like to introduce now Cindy Mentz, Trailnet CEO, to talk about Trailnet's vision for the future.
Thanks, Jamie. Well, I want to welcome you all for joining us today. I see several Trailnet board members, so thank you for joining us today. I also see a few elected officials and state and other officials, so thank you for joining us. At Trailnet, we're changing the way people think about streets, and we use several tactics. We're challenging and educating decision makers on the dangers of car-centered design and how important it is to have more complete streets type designs. And one of the ways that we most recently did that was the mayoral forum that we did together with some partners who are joining us today on the call to focus on transportation. If you want to see that recording, we've got it on our website, on Facebook, and help you get prepared for the March 4th primary. There's also some transportation questions that we've put out to all the candidates coming up. We also want to help community people and neighborhood leaders be able to advocate for safer streets. And so one of the ways we did this most recently was working with the UMSL Neighborhood Leadership Academy, doing sort of a traffic calming 101. UMSL is really great at training the leaders, and then we just brought in our training to add more technical expertise on how they can address that ongoing demand for safer streets, which is very common in many of the neighborhoods that we work with. Another fun event that we did, trying to keep folks up to date on what kind of infrastructure to be asking for, was events like Beers with Engineers last October, and we'll keep offering events like that. Another tactic we use is showing people what safer streets look like. And we recently partnered with the city of Wellston and also with the neighborhood of Holly Hills, their special business district, to create traffic calming plans, where we work together with the community to help them look at different tools and what fits for their community to slow down cars. And so helping them develop those plans gives them an implementation strategy going forward. So we're trying to meet this urgent need to educate the public, because we have seen in the past that if people aren't comfortable with the traffic calming tools like roundabouts, they're going to reject it. And so we don't want people to be uncomfortable with these proven tools that really do slow down cars and improve safety and change, fatality rates. They really do save lives. So we want people to be comfortable with them, and we want to help them better understand how those tools are being used by our local governments and the folks putting our streets together. So not only have we seen the city have growing support, many of you are familiar with the city's transportation mobility plan, but it really shows that in general, the community is willing to slow down and travel at slower speeds, which doesn't necessarily mean that it's less efficient, because if you're going around a roundabout, maybe it's replacing a stop sign. So we see that 90 and 91% of participants are willing to slow down and travel at slower speeds if it can contribute to a safer environment for everyone. So we not only saw this for the city of St. Louis, but there's been progress. In Jefferson County, they also have worked on a transportation bike ped plan. St. Louis County, different municipalities passing complete streets policies, and the leadership at MoDOT, Missouri Department of Transportation, and East West Gateway, our metropolitan planning organization, taking efforts to reduce fatalities and improve pedestrian safety by the way that we design our transportation systems. So the good news is that in our region, people get it. They know that if we want safety, we've got to find ways to slow down cars and have the environment safer for people walking and biking. But recently, the federal funding uncertainty that has been unleashed on us has really caused ongoing concern. And so many of you know that the Trump administration has been announcing changes since mid-January, but they announced some changes to transportation, environmental, public health, and equity policies and funding. And so in the past, this type of funding, whether it is transportation alternatives, congestion mitigation, air quality funding, EPA environmental justice funding, that funding has helped us make progress over the years to where we are today. And we have many projects through the city, the counties that are funded through this type of funding that is dedicated to making the streets safer for everyone. And that's how we've made this progress. And so currently, projects that have already been federally awarded, we have signed contracts, those might be at risk, but it's still really unclear. There's clashing priorities. The criteria that they released is contradictory. And so we're really just trying to sort through all of this. But we also know that the future funding, so Congress will approve transportation funding every like 4 to 5 years. And so reauthorization for the future, that funding is uncertain because of the congressional priorities that we're seeing. So what it means for Trailnet is that we do have several contracts with state and federal agencies that we're not sure what's going to happen to that funding. So that uncertainty around those contracts, it makes it difficult for us to plan in the future. And that's where your support for us really is important to help us be able to stay in the game and stay on top of what the changes are happening locally, state, and federal. So just to underlie the federal funding uncertainty, like these are just quotes that from Secretary of Transportation Sean Duffy, prioritizing how they might prioritize transportation funds. So you can read for yourself these quotes: marriage birth rates, prioritizing those that have not prohibited, didn't impose vaccine and mask mandates, requiring federal immigration enforcement. We're just not really sure how is this going to play out or be systematized. Like, we're just not sure. And so in that space, we really have to stay attuned. We know that state by state, that the states create their own funding priorities. And so whether or not those priorities sync up with those outlined by Secretary Sean Duffy, we don't know. Like, there's nothing across the board because all the states do it individually. And so we have to stay attuned and try and learn from each other during this phase to see like what's happening, in Ohio versus what's happening in Missouri or Mississippi. And as we learn what's happening to other states, it might be information that helps us navigate forward. So locally, we're continuing to reach out to City of St. Louis, county, different municipalities that have received funding, like Webster Groves received $2 million for Safe Streets for All funding, and checking to see if any changes are coming down the pike for them. So staying engaged locally. We're working with our statewide partners to see what's happening statewide, whether or not Missouri is joining any lawsuits and clamping down on this type of funding. And then federally, we'll be sending Eric Helmer and Allie, who are on the call, are going to be joining the National Bike Summit and being able to talk to our congressional delegation when they're there. So with all that uncertainty, I do want to lead with one thing that is positive. We know that statewide, there's a driver's education bill that was introduced. It's House Bill 248. It's had like one hearing. It has not been scheduled, but it's a great way to build on the momentum that we've had from passing the distracted driving legislation that the fines just came into enforcement this year. And so having driver's ed, just a moment, I don't know if everybody knows, like Missouri doesn't have a requirement for driver's education, where many of us grew up with that being part of the school curriculum. It is currently not and hasn't been. So that's just one way to help contribute to making the streets safer for everyone. And With that, please put your questions in the chat, and I'm going to turn it over to Charles Bryson, who is always got his ear to the ground and helping us lead our advocacy efforts. So, Charles?
So good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad to see you on this call this afternoon. Want to talk a little bit about advocacy and the role that we play in relationship to the region, not just the city of St. Louis, but the entire region, which includes Jefferson and Jefferson County. So one of the things that we do is we go out and make presentations on very specific topics. Right now, due to our grant funding, we're working on complete streets. But let's back up a little bit and talk about our Complete Streets for All. But let's talk about the initiative relative to the Missouri Foundation for Health. We received what you probably remember from several years ago is $40 million in American Rescue Plan Act funds been allocated for street safety. And it involves neighborhood and community events, grassroots presentations, meetings with public officials in order to get the word out about what is in the American Rescue Plan Act funding that is going to be worked on for the next 2 years until December 31st, 2026. So the city of St. Louis, and actually every place in the country, has until December 31st of 2026 to spend all of their ARPA money. So we are following that to make sure not only is it spent according to what the law was, which is City Ordinance 71650, but also relative to what the community in each neighborhood wants as well. And so we are heavily involved in that operation to sort of make sure, inform neighborhood residents what they can expect to see out of the bill 71650, what they can expect in the future. And we know things may have changed a little bit because of all of the weather issues that we've had recently, that what you do is you say, well, we're going to spend X amount of dollars on a particular street or a particular road. Well, that may actually be a little bit larger based on the fact that, guess what? There are now more potholes, or they're sinking in or caving in relative to that particular area. So we're going to be monitoring that. We're going to be monitoring what they're doing on the city of St. Louis side, certainly in the St. Louis County as well. Next slide, please. So part of our advocacy is, as you can see, we have 95 total grassroots education moments over the course of 2024. We've had several this year that were, I would say, outstanding. And I want to thank those organizations. We have one coming up pretty soon. But it's really good to have grassroots organizations say, yes, come tell us what's going on, come instruct us as to what we need to know so that we can advocate for ourselves. At the end of the day, it's not about always Trailnet's advocacy. It is about the advocacy of all the other organizations and all individuals who go to ward meetings, neighborhood meetings, block unit meetings, and say, these are the things we have to make sure that our streets and sidewalks are safe and secure. Next slide, please. So then we get to complete streets for all. Excuse me, what are complete streets? There's two sort of definitions. One is done by the U.S. Department of Transportation. Complete streets are streets designed and operated to enable safe use and support mobility for all users. And then there's Smart Growth America, who says complete streets is an approach to planning, designing, and building streets, I would also say maintaining streets, that enable safe access for all users. If you notice, the two most important words are safe streets for all users. So however you choose to use the street, however you use the street, whether you are a pedestrian, a bicyclist, whether you're in a wheelchair, whether you're in a scooter, all should be planned, designed, built, and maintained for all users. That is what both definitions really sort of suggest, and that is what is passed by the city of St. Louis. Next slide, please. And what is the benefit of complete streets? Well, you can see this list. I want you to go to the far right where it says streets for all users. children, the elderly, special needs populations, low income and affordable. And what you learn, especially in terms of low income and affordability, is there have been a increased number of fatalities, serious injuries on our streets due to problems of those streets being complete streets and therefore not accessible to all who are going to use and need it on a regular basis. So one of the things that we've done as Trailnet for the last now 5 years is we put in a excuse me, we've put in a process of identifying car crashes, and it's in our crash report will be coming out in the near future. And I think one of the things that it suggests is we need to do a better job to make our streets complete for those disabled, special needs, low income areas, and affordability areas. Next slide, please. And so I said earlier, City Ordinance 71882 was signed into law on June 7th. Again, we put the words in, and I don't know if Alderwoman Schweitzer is on this call, but I really appreciate her efforts to make to do as well as she could in terms of this law out of her committee. Planning, design, construction, or reconstruction of any public right-of-way over $500,000 to consider all users. And the previous ordinance did not have, I don't think it had planning and design in it, and it certainly didn't have the $500,000 stipulation. So I think great effort by her and her committee to make sure that all users were considered, and complete streets principles, superseded planning and land use decisions. So there's a process, which we will talk about in just a minute, for the planning and land use decisions by the City of St. Louis. Approach shall also prioritize, enhance, I'm getting comments, so I have to wait. Prioritize, enhance access to destinations such as schools, parks, healthy food establishments, public transportation, and other key locations. I also want to thank CP2, and Danny is on the call. When there was an issue related to Tower Grove Park and getting across Kings Highway, CP2 rallied 500 signatures that were submitted to the mayor's office and to aldermen that said, hey, we want a good, solid way to get across the street from one side of Kings Highway to the other on a regular basis. And so we need to make some changes. We ask you to make changes into the geography of what you were trying to do. The design of what you were trying to do. And they took it to heart. And I think there were some major changes. I think Grand Avenue is another one that also did that. So I think getting community involved in the decision-making process is an important element of complete streets. Next slide, please. So major projects, and this goes to the ordinance, major projects are projects with transportation or mobility elements over $500,000. It establishes a complete streets advisory committee, but very importantly, creates and maintains public right-of-way that are compliant with the American with Disabilities Act, which was not in the previous ordinance. And accommodations will be provided for all modes of transportation to continue to use streets and sidewalks safely during any construction or repair work which takes place within the right-of-way. So what the ordinance now screams at is, A, it has to be for all users. We're going to have citizen input or resident input, and it has to conform to the American with Disabilities Act. Next slide, please. So what is a Complete Streets Advisory Committee? You can see the categories: 2 members from the Board of Public Service, 2 members from Planning and Urban Design, 2 members from Streets Department, which will shortly become City Department of Transportation, the Office of the Disabled, the Department of Public Safety, and the Health Department. and one member from the public who's a mayoral appointment who resides in the city. I believe that person has to be confirmed by the Board of Aldermen as well. And so you have a lot of different entities who are going to be at the table helping decide, design, and implement a complete streets strategy. Next slide, please. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I didn't know they were same color. As the ordinance provides, they must meet quarterly. They must meet committed to advertise, open to the public, accessible to the public, and allow for public comment as part of the process. So again, you have resident input all along the way around Complete Streets. Invites organizations to present at the committee meetings and review and assess alignment with the Complete Streets policy and the transportation mobility plan, which we talked about a little earlier. The interesting thing about that is the transportation mobility plan will probably come out mid next year, but we're already looking at how do those two things come together so that you have a true citywide policy around transportation and mobility. Next slide, please. Mandates the city be responsible. Again, this is part of the legislation. Mandates the city be responsible for safety. Creates a framework for all road and sidewalk users. Creates a framework to discuss funding for streets and sidewalks, which is sorely inadequate. And safety of all users must be first and foremost in the minds of city officials when they are working on streets, because every street technically is a complete street or has the opportunity to be a complete street. Next slide, please. And city ARPA funding, maintenance, and repair. The city does not allocate funding for street maintenance. Funding comes from ward capital, and it goes directly to the alderperson, I should say. The city allocates funds in two different ways. For sidewalks, gives some of the money to BPS, and some of the money goes to streets department for sidewalk maintenance and repair. And the American Disabilities Act funding must all be allocated by December 31st, 2021, and spent by December 31st, 2026, as part of the city ARPA funding for street maintenance and repair. So the city now has its work to do around those issues. Next. And City Ordinance 71650, allocated resources to, which was the ARPA Rescue Plan Act funding. So you can see here what money was spent to the city for doing the work. $12 million for design, implementation, and traffic calming, $14.5 million to address ADA, $3.5 million for safety improvements for the top 10 crash corridors, and $8 million for street paving for arterials. So that is where we are now. We are still monitoring how those funds are being spent and will be spent in the future. Next slide, please. So how do you get involved? You ask your alderperson the status of road repairs in their jurisdiction. You contact with the streets department with a request for information. You contact the Board of Public Service with a request for information. And you follow us on both Facebook and I believe Twitter should be up there as well. You follow us as we follow the processes that are going on now regarding streets and sidewalks, not only in the city, but also in the region. I think that might be my last slide. It is. Thank you all. Greatly appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks, Charles. Yeah, I know folks always want to hear what's going on locally and how they can get involved and stay informed. Along those lines, we'll move now to Eric in planning, and he can talk about how he and his team put some of those safer streets into action.
Yeah, thank you, Jamie, and thank you, Charles. So as Charles and Jamie kind of mentioned, our work in the planning department really focuses on translating all this advocacy work on things like complete streets into plans and projects that can make physical improvements to streets around St. Louis for all users. And we really focus a lot, as Charles alluded to, on making sure that has strong community engagement and community input into those plans and projects that are taking place. a lot of this is driven by the need to address traffic violence. And this remains a major problem both in St. Louis and in the county in the broader metropolitan area. So one of the key ways we do this is through publishing our annual crash report. Every year we collect crash data from the state. We extract data on cyclists and pedestrians specifically. We add some layers of information to this data to address some gaps, and we analyze the results to see how well our streets are being designed and maintained to protect all road users. While 2023 saw a major reduction in pedestrian fatalities, that figure unfortunately rose dramatically, about 187% in 2024 to an all-time high. Fortunately, we can say there's not only bad news here. So with our crash report, we've been advocating for changes to principal arterial roads for 5 years now, and decision makers have really started to respond. The city, for example, has responded with major commitments to principal arterial traffic safety enhancements on roads like Kings Highway and Grand, and results of similar projects around the area really show promise. So on Natural Bridge, for example, a high crash corridor, our principal arterial that MoDOT addressed back in late 2020, we see how traffic calming infrastructure can really work. In the 4 years since those major safety improvements were made, we've seen the total number of crashes drop by 65%, injuries at major intersections decrease by 75%, and crashes involving pedestrians drop by 40%. These preliminary figures, which we will publish in our annual crash report this spring, show that traffic calming infrastructure really works. And our planning team continues to work on getting more of that type of infrastructure built in and around St. Louis. Next slide, please. One of the key ways we've been doing this in the past year is on a joint project with CBB traffic engineers and the Holly Hills Special Business District. Trailnet was hired by the SBD to design a comprehensive traffic calming plan for the entire neighborhood. We conducted surveys with over 100 residents, through multiple pop-up engagement events, received input from over 200 people, and we turned all that into a holistic plan for improving safety on Holly Hills streets, which will be published next month. This is a really exciting project, not just because we believe it will add safety for Holly Hills residents, businesses, and visitors, but because this can really act as a model for how neighborhoods can come together to make comprehensive planning and design efforts to really guide safety decisions in a more structured way. And we're really trying to replicate this work in communities around St. Louis currently, and will continue in the future by partnering with ongoing planning projects and continue to engage with neighborhoods who are asking for more traffic calming. Next slide, please. We're also working to increase street safety in the planning department through our Safe Routes to School program, which is funded by federal DOT money managed and administered by MoDOT, as well as support from General Motors. Building on Trailnet's Safe Routes to School success work, working with Froebel Elementary School, which eventually helped lead to the Louisiana Calm Street pilot project, Trailnet's partnered with B-Works to assist 7 priority schools in St. Louis City with developing education and engineering projects that encourage more active transportation choices, increase the safety of all trips to school. This year, Trailnet will continue work begun in 2024 with Hickey Elementary School in the Greaterville neighborhood of North St. Louis, where last year we organized a bike rodeo for their National Night Out, and with the help of a mini grant from the National Safe Routes Partnership, organized a Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day activity that engaged 5th and 6th grade students in activities and programs that connected walking promotion with history lessons and themes of community improvement. We've also been leading a transportation and mobility working group in the area to support the Planning and Urban Design Agency's Plan STL Comprehensive Neighborhood Planning Initiative, which includes Safe Routes to School elements. So this year we're going to expand on that, and we're beginning work. We've already begun work with the City Garden Montessori School in the Botanical Heights neighborhood of South City. So both of these areas are undergoing some pretty major planning and development efforts, and that makes this a really essential time for promoting street safety and complete streets designs, promoting active transportation and safety for all. We're going to do this through bike classes, walking school buses, bike trains, traffic and infrastructure studies, conversations and surveys with parents in the community, and other activities, all with the hope of well, not the hope, all to produce engineering designs and comprehensive plans that encourage, healthier lifestyles, more walking, more biking, and also just broaden the safety impacts, not just for the schools and their families, but for those communities that those schools are part of.
Well, thank you so much, Eric. It's always exciting to see all that stuff come together and become a reality, and especially in the schools and with the kids in their neighborhoods and that. So that's very cool. I know something else that everyone is excited about is the spring weather we're having and getting back to getting out on the trails and getting on their bikes. So let's go now to Gina, who will give us a sneak peek at what you can expect from the 2025 ride season at Trailnet.
Thank you, Jamie, and thanks everyone again for being here. Yeah, I'm excited to share a preview of what we have planned for Trailnet's 2025 ride season. This year, we're rolling out 7 classic rides and a series of community and celebration rides. These are all aimed at bringing people together and engaging with our mission to make streets safer and more connected. And it's more about just the miles ridden. They support healthy lifestyles, they encourage active lifestyles and accessible biking for everyone. We design our rides to be inclusive to riders of all abilities, offering shorter family-friendly routes to longer, highly challenging experiences. So whether you're a seasoned cyclist or just starting out, we would love to have you come ride with us this year. So for a little sneak peek into our ride season, we'd like to introduce one of our new exciting rides. This will be the inaugural year for Kirkwood Rockin' the Suburb Ride. This ride's on June 7th, and the excitement and enthusiasm is already growing fast. It's going to take cyclists through scenic areas, neighborhoods, parts of Grants Trail, celebrating the unique character of that southwestern region. And we've had a long-standing relationship with the city of Kirkwood. In 2014, we partnered with city officials to create a pedestrian bicycle master plan. So we've definitely got a history there, and we'd like to showcase that. Another fun fact is that Kirkwood was the first planned residential commuter suburb west of the Mississippi River, hence the name, the Rock in the Suburbs. So please come out and join us for this exciting new ride. And it's going to be the same day as the Downtown Kirkwood's Route 66 Cars and Guitars Festival, which draws over 8,000 people to the region every year. And we encourage participants to stick around and enjoy the music and the fun and local culture. So if you're interested in our entire ride season calendar, we have an event coming up on March the 12th at 5 p.m. at Shrewsbury City Center. It's called Beans, Bikes, and Brews, and the beans is for chili. So we're going to have a chili supper that evening. And also with our new sponsors, Perennial Beer, we'll be passing out some of their beverages as well. And it's our kickoff for the ride season. So it's an official season launch where we'll give everyone our calendar to see all of our great rides we have planned. We bring together supporters, we bring together volunteers, thank our volunteers, and encourage folks to volunteer this year and celebrate what's ahead. So then it's also good for families. It's good for groups to come together, bring a friend, and please help us share the word for this and build some momentum for our ride season. And we're going to be putting information on how to sign up for this in our follow-up email.
Thank you so much, Gina. Yeah, if you've never been to Beans, Bikes, and Brews, definitely come out. It's a good time, even if you're not a cyclist. There's kind of something for everybody there. So that concludes our staff presentations for today. We'll go ahead and move on into the Q&A session. Like I said, I'm going to stop the recording. So just want to take a moment to say bye to everybody watching this in the future. If everyone wants to give a little wave, we're going to end the recording in just one moment after I find the button.